O great line that splits our mountain spines, from the passes of Snoqualmie to the thrones of Baker, you haunt our mountain's dreams. I promise this fault is not going to haunt your dreams. As we continue down the Olympic-Wallowa Lineament, we have to take a really sharp left-hand turn, or right, and go north. Because this is a part of Owl, but not part of Owl kind of story. The Straight Creek Fault meets up with Owl roughly around Easton before heading all the way north to the Canadian border and then further still north along the Fraser Fault for a total of about 350 miles. We've actually reached a point in our story where we're actually starting to talk about things that happened before the Olympics. Washington is built mostly on rocks that ain't from around here. They're known as exotic terrains. The Olympics, or Silenci, are just one tiny little part of the entirety of the Pacific Northwest up into Alaska's long story. And these rocks generally are old, like really old. So right from the get-go, what makes Straight Creek really impressive is that it has split all of this older, harder, generally metamorphic rock. If you'll remember in the last video, roughly from about 50 to 40-ish million years ago, I mentioned that it was a quiet period. But it was not silent, and the person in the crowd making all that noise was the Straight Creek Fault. So why are things going so nuts in this time period from the Olympics impact to the time that the Cascades start? The Olympics gave us a good old-fashioned sweet chin music to the northeast. Remember, those older terrains are made up of really hard metamorphic rock. The Olympics, though, were still continuing to be jammed into the coast of Washington, and as they were being butted up against that older, harder rock, it didn't want to move. So consider it, if you will, almost like a carpet being scrunched up against a wall. And remember how in the northern Olympic fault zone, a very similar situation happened where the lead edge of it is catching and just slipping by. And this pattern and torque moved everything to the east of the fault to the south and everything west of the fault to the north by roughly 60 miles. And a huge piece of evidence for this is a story that is so near and dear to my heart. Sandstone and coal tell no lie. Remember, the Cascades are only 35 million years old, and the Olympics are only 10. So we're talking a time period where we don't have either of them. With no Cascades and no Olympics, we're pretty much just a long sloping plain from the Rockies out. This 10 million years of pretty much unobstructed ground building, if you will, led to some massive sandstone layers that we have today. Like lots of sandstone. Like 8,000 feet of material in Black Diamond, 10,000 feet in the Carbon River Valley, and perhaps upwards of 20,000 feet of sandstone down in Centralia Chehalis, and two other units known as the Swauk and Chuckanut Formation. Swauk Formation here down by Ellensburg and Easton, and the Chuckanut Formation up by Bellingham were split by the Straight Creek Fault during this time period of intense earthquake. It's not just these two units either. There are several other bodies that have been shifted because of Straight Creek's motion. So Straight Creek's relation to Owl. It's kind of curious how Straight Creek kind of just hits Owl and stops. To the best of our knowledge, the Straight Creek Fault hasn't been found south of Owl. Faults generally don't just stop. So why does it stop at Owl? Well, you're gonna have to wait. But I can share with you that Straight Creek Fault is no longer active. The end of Straight Creek's time came at the same time that the rise of the Cascades began. After the Olympics broke the back of the Farallon Plate, it took a little while for the Juan de Fuca Plate to subduct low enough to cause volcanism. And in doing so, that magma was able to come to the surface and gather in large pools, which we talked about in last video. They're known as batholiths. The presence of this molten material near the surface essentially welded the Straight Creek Fault together and stopped action along it. So I promise you don't have to worry about it popping off anytime soon. By the way, if I'm going through any of this too quickly or you have additional questions about these topics, please ask questions and I am more than glad to answer them in the comments or in a video. Next on Dragon Ball Owl, we resume our track to the southeast and I get to really work over Yakima. We have got so much to talk about in our next couple of videos, and then in the next one we enter the Yakima Fold Belt.